Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. If you find yourself on YouTube today, please don't forget to ring that bell. And if you're on a podcast platform, please take the time to subscribe and share this conversation, because today we are going to be talking about female empowerment. My guest wants to change the way that we define and express female empowerment. My guest today is Diana Percovic. She is the founder of Good Girl Mafia, and she is a leader in empowerment for women. Diana, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Gina, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here, and I really do appreciate the invitation. I'm so looking forward to this.
This is a long time coming. As we were talking about before I hit record, we have been Instagram colleagues and friends for many years. We can't even really remember how it all began. And I just thought in this season, I saw what you were doing on Instagram, and I thought this is a conversation I would love to have on my podcast. So I reached out. You generously said yes. So today I get to see your beautiful face and talk to you about this mission and message of female empowerment. Why don't you let us know why you're so passionate about this?
You know, Gina, it all started about a year ago. I was hit by a Suburban while I was crossing the street. So yes, as a pedestrian, that big car, that SUV smacked into me. And, yes, I was injured, all of these things. And I'm not going to spend the entire podcast giving you the laundry list of my physical injuries. But the one thing that really affected me more than anything else was I suffered a severe concussion, which was subsequently diagnosed as a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And so from that, as you can imagine, like after an accident like that, you have to take downtime. My neurologist kept saying to me, you have got to rest your brain. You've got to rest your brain. And that meant for the first time since I was, I don't know, maybe 20, 21, I was neither on camera or behind a camera. I wasn't creating television programming or content for social media. I wasn't doing anything. And what people don't realize is when you work on TV, right, or when you work in this business, you actually do see content in a very different way. But over the course of a year, I started to morph into what I like to lovingly call a civilian, right? I was just consuming content for the first time in my adult life. And that algorithm knows what to send us, right? And so it was sending me all kinds of quote unquote female empowerment content and all of this quote unquote personal development content for women. And I remember looking at this and thinking, this is very, very much not what empowerment is for women. And I came to understand that this idea of female empowerment had become co-opted, defined for us, branded, marketed, packaged, and sold to women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of female empowerment, I don't even have to say what it is because we all know. It's this image, this, I'm a boss, I'm this, very, very masculine. And that's what it was. And that's what they're selling us. But I can tell you, as a woman who works in real empowerment, that's not what I'm seeing happening with clients. That's not realistic. That is one definition, one part of empowerment, but that's not the whole game. And I think that as a collective, as women, we've outgrown it. We've moved past that because we've all come to realize, hey, wait a minute, that's not real empowerment. That's not what an empowered life means to me. And so now when people say to me, like, what is Good Girl Mafia all about? And I say, well, it's real empowerment. And they say, well, what's real empowerment? And my answer is always, well, you tell me. And that's the whole point, right? Like, Gina, I keep telling everybody, empowerment is like a fingerprint. Your empowerment is different from mine, is different from the woman beside me, different than the woman beside you. And so what I've done is I've tried to create this net, this catch-all, which is empowering women from a 360-degree standpoint: health, wealth, relationships, mindset, careers, family, like every area of life needs to be empowered in order for us to have real empowerment. So now you take that and you compare it to female empowerment, and you tell me, haven't we outgrown it?
Mm-hmm. And I think that because it's been so narrowly defined and it's been served to us on a plate of hashtag boss babe, right? This more kind of, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I think it's incongruent for a lot of women.
That's the word. And I will tell you, am I hashtag boss babe? Yeah, sure I am. But that's like one part of me. Are you a hashtag boss babe? Yeah, sure you are. But that's not all of Gina, right? And so it's co-opted, it's packaged and sold, served up, as you said, on this platter. And I think in the end, it's just another box that we have to sort of break ourselves out of. It's another glass ceiling that needs to be shattered. And I always put it to women this way, my clients, when I'm speaking, when I'm on a panel, and you see the light bulb go off. Because I say to people, I said, am I a boss babe? Yes. But that is a skill that I have. See, if we can reframe it as a skill, if we can reframe it as part of who we are, but not all of us, then I think we can start to navigate our way out of this narrowly defined definition of female empowerment.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a courageous step, because we do have a tendency to get into a community mindset, right? It's like, well, I want to own a business, so this is what it looks like. Or I want to do this thing, and this is what it looks like. And we find ourselves, to your point, narrowly defining it. But I think that there is, to your point, so much more for us to tap into who we are, that I think the courage is to step back and say, does this really fit me? And what really fits me? Is that kind of what you're coming to?
Yeah. And I think you just said that so beautifully, because, here's what I see when I coach women, right? And just so everyone knows, I have a master's certification in neuro-linguistic programming. So a lot of that has to do with what I call the tape recorder. It's your subconscious mind. And I'll tell you, you nailed a few things. So just bear with me as I go through this. So number one, there's a reason why it's difficult, I think, and this is, again, my assessment, but I think there's a reason why sometimes it's hard to move forward, right, and go into something new. Because the past we've experienced, it's a stronger reference point than a future that we don't even know what that's going to be. So I think that's one thing. It's hard to move forward. And then when we do start to move forward, because we don't know what the future looks like, we look for community where we hope we're going to get a little bit of a roadmap, right? And so when you don't know what you don't know, you look for people who do. And then the second part of that, Gina, is we are actually wired to be social. We are wired to want to connect and fit in and do all of these things. So that becomes a bit of a potent combination, right? Not knowing what's ahead of you, and then this deeply held desire to fit in and connect, that can very easily, and it's not a bad thing, right? That's how we go into these containers. The problem is if the container fits like a pair of shoes that are a half a size too small at the end of the night of a wedding, and all you want to do is take the shoes off and dance in the middle of the dance floor with your swollen feet, this is still not the answer.
It sounds like it's very important for us to pause the train, get off the train a moment, and understand who we are and what we really want, like developing our own voice. Because to your point, as females, community is such a big part of who we are and how we show up in the world. We're just drawn to that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about what you said, the way we are wired, the way our brains find our normal, and keep us safe and comfortable. So there's a lot of things going on, to your point, that keep us stuck. But I think our awareness of, does this shoe actually fit, is a good place to start.
Absolutely. Science tells us that there's two ways to be motivated, right? You can be motivated towards something, or you can be motivated away from something. And I am going to die on the summit of telling women that, there is no difference between the two. We place a much higher value on being motivated towards something. We think we need to see it, and here's the goal, and this is where I'm headed, that we place so much emphasis and so much importance on that what we don't realize is being motivated away from something is equally as powerful, right? And so what I find with respect to being stuck or pivoting or moving forward away from a situation you're in right now, or just making life changes, right? It's hard. I find oftentimes we stay stuck because we're not exactly sure where we want to go. But oftentimes, and again, science tells us being motivated away from something is just as powerful, right? And so when you think about what it takes for a woman to stand up, to make changes, to get unstuck, to pivot, that courage and that willingness, this is where I think we are all boss babes, right? We are all so badass as women. We really are. And it's, how do we take that and do it for us in a really, really healthy way? And I think it really falls under the category of, what does an empowered life look like and feel like to you? Like, really, who is she? What is she wearing? What does she look like? What does she do when she wakes up in the morning? Right? Like, what does she do for a living? Where does she go at 8 o'clock at night? Does she go to bed early? Does she get up early? Is she a night owl? Is she like, it's all of these little things that go into empowerment, but we make it like this huge thing, that it's this huge goal and we've got to go towards it. And sometimes, Gina, honestly, it's the littlest changes that actually unstuck us, and suddenly we're free.
There's a dialogue out there in the personal development world that it's not good to be negatively motivated. Like, what you focus on grows. So if you're motivated by what you don't want, it's the wrong way to go about it. And what's interesting about that, and I stand on the box of, that was a key part of certain accomplishments in my life, is going, that is not the outcome that I want. Watching the way other people chose to do or not to do things and the consequences of their actions, that has been a humongous motivator in my life specifically. And so while I understand what they're saying, what you're saying makes more sense to me, because it is sort of looking in the rearview mirror, but it's also reflecting into the future and saying, if I look back, do I want to look forward and see the same thing? And then
Hi, abort, right? When I look back, I'm like, oh my God, very, very much don't do that again, right?
Yeah.
So two things. Number one, when it comes to personal development, I don't know, Gina, I feel like women are overcharged and underserved. I really do. I think so much of it's, again, packaged and sold and marketed. And I also feel like there's so much, I call it bypassing, right? It's like, and some people are calling it toxic positivity, however you want to label it. But I will tell you something, as someone who understands the subconscious, as someone who has that certification in neuro-linguistic programming, I will tell you something. If you have all that negativity in you and you keep bypassing, you have to be positive. You can't look back. Oh, very, very much no. Like what you focus on grows. Oh my gosh. It's not what we focus on. It's what our subconscious mind focuses on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the missing link. And so let's just say, for example, you've had something happen and you're trying to just, don't want to focus on it. It's very, very bad. I'm going to move forward. Well, guess what? By not focusing on the very, very bad, that gets into your pressure cooker now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say your pressure cooker is just filled with rot. All this very, very bad stuff that I didn't want to focus on because I don't want it to grow. But now you take a fresh piece of fruit and you put it in that pressure cooker. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that one fresh piece of fruit is going to freshen up the entire pot? No, that pot is going to rot that new piece of fresh fruit. Mm-hmm. So let's just hit the reset button to your point for a second, Gina. Okay, so number one, when we are very clear on what we don't want, mm-hmm. that's how you can get clarity. That's step one, to get clear on what you do want. So I'm going to once again break the rules and say, if you're listening to this podcast, and if you've been going through a really, really rough time, number one, I want you to understand that we do hear you. And you might be like, well, Diana, we're not having a conversation. How do you know? Trust me when I tell you, Gina's obviously been through it. I've been through it. I know what it feels like. You may be in a point right now where it's like, I can't even get out of bed. I get that because I've been there, right? And so it is okay to look at what got you into bed and making you feel like you can't get up. And it is okay for you to look at that and be like, come hell, come high water, I will never, ever, ever want to be in this position again. Mm-hmm. And the moment you get clarity on that, it releases the pressure valve. And now you have a little bit of wiggle room to say, okay, well, if it's not going to be that, what will it be? You're actually, Gina, to your point, clearing the decks for the future. Instead of like, I'm not allowed to think about it and focus on it. How are you ever going to deal with it? Clear the decks, ladies. Allow yourself to, and this is what I always say, go there, don't stay there.
Yeah.
Right. Give yourself a timer, and that could be a week. That could be an hour. That could be 3 days. Only you know. Go there, come to terms with what you don't want. Don't stay there. Clear the decks for the future. Please don't listen to people who are telling you to just use these 5 affirmations every day and your life is going to change forever. It might, but you know, Gina, come on, girl. Let's keep it real, right? Let's keep it real.
Actually, when I think about this, the affirmations, the way that I see it is, if I'm telling myself something that is not true, I'm not in agreement with those words, it causes an inner conflict for me.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
and it pushes you further away from the actual affirmation.
Yeah, because you feel like a loser because you're saying things that aren't true to you in the moment.
And your body reacts.
It does.
You'll feel it. Trust me when I tell you, you will feel it. I feel as though, scientifically speaking, do affirmations work? Yes. Right? They do.
They do.
However, and this is what I work with clients on all the time, clearing the decks first. We have to make space for the affirmation. And we have to understand that we have to crawl before we walk, before we run. So you might want to, let's say you're in a really bad financial situation. And now you're listening and people are saying, say that money flows to me easily and I am a millionaire. If your entire life experience is that money does not flow to you easily, and you do not believe for one hot second that you could be a millionaire, by telling yourself that every single day, you're actually pulling yourself further and further away. What's better is to look at and say, how specifically does money seem to not come to me? Like, where is the disconnect?
Mm-hmm.
And then, do I actually believe I could be a millionaire? Like, if you grow up in a household where people always said to you, you know what, kiddo, money doesn't grow on trees. You might think that's a very benign thing, Gina, but you and I both know that over time that gets into your subconscious. So you throw a fresh piece of fruit into the money doesn't grow on trees pressure cooker, money doesn't grow on trees is what's going to live. You feel it. You've got to give yourself room, right? So it may not be money flows to me easily. I'm a millionaire. It could be I am open to making more money this month, or I am open to the possibility that my financial situation will change. You know, you've got to actually give yourself an affirmation that you believe, and it has to be done in the positive. In the positive. It can't be, I don't want to be broke. It has to be on, you know, the other hand, it has to be, I want to make money. That could be like the best affirmation for someone. I want to have money come to me. I want to earn money. I want to people happily pay me for the services that I offer. We've got to get women, Gina, like we've got to be the voice of truth and the voice of reason, right? We've got to crawl before we walk, before we run. And we've got to acknowledge the stuff that lives on our tape recorder that isn't very, very bueno. Okay? Like it's like, let's just newsflash it here. It's okay to have negative thoughts. It's okay to feel like poop. It's okay to look back and be like, I feel like I'm so stuck. Like that's step number one. And to bypass that, like we're doing people a disservice.
Well, the bypassing doesn't make it go away, to your point. It has to go somewhere. If we don't release it, like really release it, bypassing doesn't release, it stuffs it, you know. And is that empowering? If we're talking about empowerment, is it empowering to deny parts of yourself that you don't like?
Nope. Now, let's talk about parts of ourselves that we don't like. Let's just like seriously, like let's lay it out for a second, ladies. What don't you like about yourself? We all have a laundry list, right? And it's the things like, see, here's what's happening in personal development right now. The things we don't like about ourselves is I need to lose weight. I need to change my job. I want to be in a relationship. Like these are the things that personal development, again, women are overcharged, underserved completely. What I think we need to do, and this is what I do with real empowerment. I take that industrial sized fishing net and I throw it off of the pier with my clients. And I pull that fishing net back. And what do you think that gets? All the garbage, all the gunk that's on the bottom of the ocean. Saying I want more confidence is taking a little fishing rod and throwing it off the pier and reeling like one little thing back in. So what we really don't like about ourselves are the thoughts and the beliefs. Like it is a belief. Like you may believe that you don't fit in. So that's a belief. That's the thing you don't like. So I don't fit in. How does that present? People don't like me. I don't have friends. Nobody ever asks me out on dates. I'm lonely all the time. Why don't I have a group of friends? So you're going to have, or I go to networking events and nothing ever happens. So then you get a networking coach, or you get a dating coach, or you get, right? But it's like at the end of the day, when you feel deep down inside like you don't fit in, then that affects what? Your worthiness, your lack of, there's a lack of, I am not worthy enough to blank. Right. And this is, again, me taking a really educated guess from working with clients. Like, I'm middle child. I was out last night with friends, and a friend said, wait, what child are you? I'm like, middle child. They're like, oh, right. Nobody likes me. I don't fit in. And I started laughing. And I said, what child are you? And they're like, I'm the baby. I'm like, right. Oh, you can get away with murder. Nothing's ever going to happen to you because you're the baby of the family. And these are the things that actually feed the stuff that we don't like about ourselves. The problem is that the things we don't like about ourselves presents as something, and then that's the thing that we're trying to fix. That is a symptom, but it's not the root cause. So if you don't like something about yourself, guess what? Oh my goodness, if you've identified it, you should actually be unbelievably thrilled, number one, and number two, proud of yourself that you have the courage and the willingness to look at it. It's some of these things are so painful to look at, right? And then people say, oh, you shouldn't be mean to yourself. You're being mean to yourself. It's like, actually, I'm looking at my disempowered patterns. I'm looking at my shadow. I'm looking at the ego. And that takes courage and willingness. And you are one of the strongest people I know if you have the ability to do that. And again, Gina, this is where I feel like in our efforts to help, we're actually maybe not helping.
Yeah. You're talking about the beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves. I think some of the things we don't like about ourselves are attached to stories that we have been told from childhood, from an adult who had their own pressure cooker of rot, and they put on us some things. And I'm not trying to vilify anybody, but the reality is there are times when we need to look at what we don't like about ourselves and really say, is this true? This belief, this idea that I'm too quiet, I'm too shy, I talk too much, I'm loud, I'm, whatever it is. And then really take that particular belief and thought to court and see if it stands up to reality. It may have become true because we've lived into it, but we are allowed to grow out of and away from the things other people have defined us as. And what you're saying in my thought process is this empowerment is actually us taking the story back.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so let's chunk it down for people. So number one, you brought up a very good point. You know, it's not to vilify anyone. It really isn't. It's if you lived, you've had negative things put into your subconscious mind. I'm just saying. Okay.
Yes.
And I think that there is such a focus on trauma, right? That I think oftentimes there are things that we don't take into account. And for example, negative installations, you don't hear that term very often, do you? No. And we should, because a negative installation could be something as simple as another kid on the playground saying something to you that got stuck in your head and you don't even know that it's there. Children and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but sometimes somebody explains things in a certain way at specifically the right time and you get it. So I know, Gina, that there might be one woman today who hears this, who like a switch is going to go off, right? So from the ages of 0 to about 7, 8, 9, depending on, whoever you're listening to, that's when our subconscious mind is formed. Okay. So you think about 6 months of age, 1, 2 years of age, right? And it's like you might be in a crib and those are bars, right? Like, how does a child's brain, magical brain, interpret things, right? Like when you're a toddler, you hear no all the time, right? And rightfully so. No, don't touch that, it's hot. No, don't go there, you might fall. No, don't, right? But these are all things that end up in our subconscious. Because there's so much emphasis on trauma, that if you haven't had trauma, you might actually feel like, well, I don't know, I must be really screwed because nothing that bad ever happened to me. And like, why am I such a hot mess? So I want you to think about the way a child's mind doesn't have the words, doesn't have the awareness, doesn't have any of the things, just the magical mind of a child that makes all of these reasons up in their mind. And that's why so often when parents get divorced, and you see it depicted in movies all the time, where they always say to the child, this is not your fault. This is not your fault. This has nothing to do with you, because children have a magical mind and they'll make it their fault somehow. So I want you to think about that, because I always say to myself, okay, Diana, subconscious mind 0 to 9. So pick an age, 3 years old. A 3-year-old is making my decisions. 3-year-old Diana is making decisions for me. I guess it kind of makes sense in a way, right? But 0 to 9, your subconscious mind doesn't have to be trauma. Nobody had to be out to get you. Didn't have to be on purpose. This is a commonality between us all. Now, when you get older, and this is the premise of NLP. So every single thing that you think, that you do, that you say, all of it, it's based on patterns. And because of the way I work, I call these patterns empowered or disempowered, right? Because, Gina, we got to give something for us to like zone in and hone in so we can start working on it, right? Now, these patterns are dictated by the way in which our brain codes information and learning. What is information and learning? Well, the way someone speaks to you, that might trigger a disempowered pattern. Like you might be dating a guy who says something to you that's a joke or it's benign or whatever, but it triggers this subconscious pattern of the way maybe your brother spoke to you when you were a kid, and you get all defensive and you don't know why you're defensive. So this is how it all starts to play out. And these patterns become what? Patterns of thinking, then what you think you say, right? Because you believe it. And then what you say and what you do turns into what?
Your
where
life.
you are right now, right? So if we can reverse engineer that, and if we can actually help women get super logical, like I say to women all the time, take the unhappiest thing in your life right now and bring it to me. Take one unhappy thing. I want you to take the unhappiest thing in your life right now, and I want you to label it as disempowered. Now, imagine if you and I took that disempowered thing and we flipped it to empowered. And then we did that over and over and over and over again. Like if you took the unhappiest thing and the patterns behind that, and you changed that one thing, your whole, the trajectory of your life would change, which goes back to, do I really need to have a goal? Do I really need to see where I'm headed? Or is there just as much value as looking at what I don't want? See, it's so much more layered, and it's so much deeper than what we've been told. This is what I see with clients.
And the thing we don't know until we know is how powerful those long-held beliefs are. And they're what make it difficult to change, because our brain is like, no, that's not who you are. And I think to your point at the beginning, if empowerment, female empowerment, is being a boss babe, having that masculine energy, having all these specific characteristics, well, the world is full of different personalities, different desires, different ways of coming at life. You have your quieter people, you have your louder people, you have your logical people, you have your emotional people. We do not all fall under one hashtag. It's impossible.
Well, and then what? Am I telling every woman now that it's like, if you're the quiet one, now you've got to fit into this box?
Right. And
I mean, Gina, it's not fair.
It's disempowering, to your point.
Yes. Hallelujah. We're getting somewhere. Like, this is exactly like, you can imagine, you know, with a brain injury, I think, so a couple things. I think that because of my empowerment journey and where I am today, I handled this brain injury much differently than I would have had I been the same disempowered girl I was 10 years ago. Very, very much so. And I will tell you that, for example, the way I speak to you today, I could not do that 6 months ago. Like, my speech was heavily affected. My brain capacity heavily affected. Like, it was just such a disaster, especially for me, because, you know, I've worked on national television my whole life. So it becomes such a part of your identity, right? And so to lose that is awfully scary, awfully scary. And having to sit back, it took me deeper into my empowerment journey. And I handled it so differently that I knew in real time that what was happening to me and what was happening around me, that I actually put it through my empowerment filter. And I would ask myself every day, like, if I can only do one thing today, because that's all I could do some days was one thing, was like, does this empower me or does this disempower me? See, my disempowerment shows up in a way that's very female empowerment. Like, my disempowerment is, I can keep going, Gina, no matter what. Like, I could be dying and I will keep going. Like, I remember being on the air and I cut myself, but my hand is off to the side bleeding. And if you saw me, I was like, and welcome back, everybody. It's so great to have you. Like, that is my default mode. But if you ask yourself, is that healthy? Is that empowering when you have a brain injury, neck injuries, shoulder, sprained hips, back? Keep going. That's a recipe for disaster. So oftentimes you've got to get clear on what's going to be empowering, what's going to be disempowering. And if you are naturally a quiet, shyer person by nature, what might actually disempower you the most is to freak your system out, to try and make yourself be this. I'm going to use my voice. Whoa, let's pump the brakes, everybody, because maybe using your voice looks very different to what somebody else using their voice looks like, right? And so for me, what I found was more empowering. It was the hardest thing I ever did, Gina, was stop working, take time out, do nothing. You know, brain injury, you gotta do nothing. And that turned out to be the most empowering thing for me. But on the surface, it looked disempowering. Last July, August, that was for me, that I reached the apex of I couldn't take it another minute. Like, it was just all becoming too much, right? And it was really affecting my mindset. And so if I say to clients, go there, don't stay there, but I'm pretending everything is okay, then I'm a hypocrite, right? Right. So I decided I'm going to let myself go there, but not stay there. So I said, I had a procedure on my neck, and I said, I'm going to allow myself to have every negative thought, all the things that, you know, quote unquote, we're not supposed to focus on, because then it grows, right? Right. Like you were saying, Gina. So I said to myself, okay, until I am put under for this neck procedure, I'm going to let myself every negative thought, everything I'm not supposed to focus on, like all of the things that you're not supposed to do for your mindset. I'm like, no, guess who's going to go there? Me. Now, on the outside, that looks disempowering. On the inside, I knew that's part of my empowerment journey. This is the part we're missing. There's a journey. And so I had someone around me at the time who very well intentioned, but I remember standing in my kitchen and I was saying something, and she looks at me and she goes, come on, coach, you know better than that. That's a limiting belief. And I was like, oh, this is not okay. This is not okay. I'm like, until I go under, this is what I'm doing. When I come out from anesthesia, that's the cutoff. But until that time, I'm going to do it. And it's amazing to me how we've all been programmed. What she's saying is what we've been taught, right? Like, that's a bad mindset. That's a limiting belief. Like, these are all things that we've been taught, but it's a journey. And that's the thing, Gina. It's like, I get concerned, if I'm being really honest, I get concerned for the woman who is down and out, like I've been, right? And she is buying into that thing of, come on, coach, that's a limiting belief. That's a negative mindset. And we've got to get real. Like, I had a brain injury. I had like a laundry list of physical injuries. Am I supposed to pretend that that's not happening and be, whatever? No, I had to allow myself to have what can only be called a natural reaction. Like with a TBI, Gina, insomnia is a very common expression of it. It's a very common symptom. Also very common is migraines. And if there were 30 days out of a month, I'm being like conservative. Like if I had 27 days of migraines, that was a lot, right? Like that, or that wasn't enough. Like I pretty much every day I had a migraine. So you go month after month after month of, I can't move my neck. I can't finish a sentence. I have migraines all day, every day. I don't sleep at night. My hips hurt. My back hurts. My shoulder is torn and swollen. Like, I'm sorry. But if you're trying to tell a woman in that position, come on, coach, get your mindset right. It's like, whoa, very, very much not okay. Like, think about divorce, Gina, right? Think about women who are going through a divorce. Kids, no kids, 20 years, 5 years, doesn't matter to me. You hit the skids. That feels like, have you ever been divorced, Gina? No. Okay. So I have, right? And it's like, there's nothing in life that you don't want to fail at than a marriage. Right. And we're telling women, like, get back out there. And, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else, and like all of these things. But allow women, for the love of God, allow women to just feel it and be it. Right. And I'm saying again, within the confines of like, go there, don't stay there. It's part of a journey. If you're committed to a journey of, I'm going to pivot and change my life, this applies. If you're not there yet and you just want to like not get out of bed ever again, then please take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, can we at least be honest enough to say to the woman right now who's listening to this, who doesn't know what tomorrow brings and if she even wants to wake up, like, I want to go to bed tonight, and very, very much, if I don't have to wake up, that's okay. Like, can we at least tell that woman that that's okay? Like, please, like, you can, like, I'm almost pleading with society to get real, right? And I'm just pleading with everybody. Can we all have more grace for one another and make room for the good, the bad, and the ugly? Doesn't all have to be packaged. It doesn't.
I think there's a little bit of anxiety around the messy for people. Yeah. Because we are kind of taught to avoid the messy, but that is life. So we're lying to ourselves.
I do feel like even the messy, speaking of lying to yourself, like even the messy feels packaged to me.
It has to look a certain way to be a successful messy.
It's like even that, it's just, I don't know. It's like, you can't win for losing anymore. Seriously. It's like, women show a happy side of their life on social media, and now that's branded someone's quote unquote highlight reel. Well, maybe she's happy. Like, have we ever considered like maybe that's her life all the time?
Yeah.
Like,
and
maybe
it could
she
be
is happy. Maybe she's at that part of her journey. Like, I'm at the part of my journey where I got hit by a car and blah, 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 and all of that. But I like it. deepened my empowerment. I had the empowerment skills. I'm so empowered 360 degrees that throughout it all, I had the patience, because I'm like, no, this will all like, and I hate using these words because I know someone's listening and they're like, I can't even conceive of it. But I knew it was happening for me and not to me. Right. And so maybe someone's highlight reel is their life. Maybe they've gone through their hard times and maybe they're now on a different part of their empowerment journey. Right. But now we even vilify that. But now it's like everybody puts their trauma out there and unhealed trauma. And it's like, that is actually also very dangerous, because now I'm showing what upset looks like, but that's raw, real trauma. And then people comment and they make negative comments. And then that's just hyper traumatizing someone who's already traumatized. So it's girl, it's gotten so complicated and it's gotten so out of hand that everything is turned into judgy, 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 judgy. You judge the good when someone's happy. You judge someone who's pretty. You judge someone who's not considered pretty. We judge someone who's showing trauma. We judge someone who's worked through their trauma. Like, it's all so nuts.
If there were three things that you could anchor people into to kind of help steer their ship toward their own true empowerment, what would those three things be, Diana?
I love this question. I do. So, okay, I'm going to stick to three, Gina.
You can give me four.
Okay.
I'll take it.
I love it. She knows me. Okay, so the number one thing I want every woman to do right now is to ask herself, I want you to ask yourself, what does an empowered life look and feel like to me? Because when I ask women, what is your definition of female empowerment? Confidence, women supporting women, using my voice. And then when I say, well, what does an empowered life personally look like and feel like to you? They have a hard time answering. So that's number one. You have to ask yourself and get really clear on, what does an empowered life look and feel like to you? For some women, it's I want to have a family. This is what I want my family to look like. Or for other women, it's I want to be of service. You know, I've dreamt of being a nurse my whole life. Like, I just want to be of service. So get really, really clear, and everyone's is different. Remember, empowerment is a fingerprint. Everyone's is different. So that's number one. Number two, I want you to, and it could hurt, and I'm putting it out there right now. I want you, and it could hurt, to look at that definition of what an empowered life would look like and feel like, and compare it to where you are right now. And I want you to allow it to sting if it does. I want you to allow it to excite you if it does. I want you to allow it to do whatever it's going to do for you, whatever that comparison is. And then so that's number two. Number three, I never, ever, 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 ever want you to ask why again. Why am I not there? Why does this bother me? Please. And I'm going to tell you why.
Why?
But okay. But if we go back to the premise of NLP and the way our brain works, right? Everything we think, believe, see, do, behave, it's all patterns. Patterns are, they're based on the way in which your brain codes information and learning. The moment you ask yourself why, that information and that learning and everything is actually based on your disempowered patterns. So it's the disempowered pattern asking the disempowered pattern why. You're always going to come up with a disempowered answer, because your own map of the world, your own tape recorder is asking and answering the same question, right? So if you ask why, it's like picking up a self-help book and reading it without doing the subconscious work, because your subconscious is reading and interpreting this self-help book in a disempowered way, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So number one, define what an empowered life would look like and feel like to you. Number two, I want you to compare it to where you are right now and let yourself feel whatever it is you're going to feel. Number 3, I want you to never, ever, 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 ever ask why again. And number 4, I want you to start asking yourself questions to pivot, right? I'm going to teach you a little self-empowerment here and a few things that as a coach, how you can self-coach, okay? So compare the two. This is my vision. This is where I am. And I want you to ask yourself an objective question. How specifically, like what specifically could be the first step I would take? What specifically could be the first step I would take? And at least start there. Now, and is what I'm saying the sexiest thing in the world? No, I get it. But that's why I keep it real. Because I could sit here and I could tell you all the sexy things that are clickbaity, that's going to make you want to like work with me as a coach. I'm a firm believer if some like the people who I'm meant to coach, those women, they'll find me. I don't need to sit here and like tell you something clickbaity and sexy. So are these couple of points the sexiest thing in the world? No, but those are the things that in fact can get you your first finger out of the ground, right? That first wiggle out of the quicksand that you feel stuck in, right? And if I can at least trigger that in you, then as someone who actually does really genuinely believe in empowerment, my job has been done, right? If you can wiggle that first finger, girls, trust when I tell you, if nothing else, that is all you need. That's your first step. We're just not, that's not what's packaged and sold, right? That's your first step to the life you know you should be living. That's your first step to feeling good all the time. That's your first step to confidently being able to use your voice because you know where specifically that voice is coming from, right? So these are the things that we need to tell women, especially women who are having a hard time, or Gina, women who've never done any therapy or any personal development or any of that, because it's daunting. It's daunting, right? And so we need to actually put that net out for all women, not just some, all of them.
Diana, how can people get in contact with you? Where can they find you?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Number 1, you can go to goodgirlmafia.com. That's my website. Number 2, you can find me on Instagram at goodgirlmafia. And just so everybody knows, you can always DM me. I always DM people back. There is also a link in my profile if you do want to work together. I'm also building out, as we discussed, Gina, E2, which is this live coaching. It's an event, but it's actually a coaching intensive. I'm curating some of the best experts in their field so that we can help empower women from a 360-degree standpoint and do it in a high quality setting with beautiful food and women, a stranger sitting next to you who is going to walk out, your partner, right? And your partner in moving forward. And that's why I called it the empowerment ecosystem, right? Because I think we need to build this container in this ecosystem where we actually can create this idea of women supporting women and empowering women from this 360-degree standpoint. And it's all there at goodgirlmafia.com.
Fantastic. Well, Diana, I want to thank you so much for saying yes to me, for coming on the show, and for really shedding some light around an honest and congruent and possible way of having empowerment that feels right, is right. Thank you for taking your trauma and using that time in a way that's actually benefiting me and so many other women. I really honor your journey. And thank you so much for doing that work and for sharing, for being the person that's putting this out into the world and being willing to stand against the tide and be a bulwark for the truth of what empowerment really is and can look like for each one of us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Gina. And honestly, like, you're bringing tears to my eyes. I'm so honored to be able to do this and to have some of your time and be on this podcast, because I think that this is a message we need to amplify. We need to amplify it. So thank you so much, Gina. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Diana. Friends, today, if you find us on YouTube and you want to know more about Diana and her Good Girl Mafia, just check down below. Those links are right there for you. If you happen to be driving, you can head to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 343 when you land somewhere safe. You can check out all the links there as well. This conversation is so empowering. And I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but in reality, understanding that we do not have to continue to conform to the paradigms of what femininity is, what female empowerment is. We are not obligated to take an outside definition of empowerment and who we are supposed to be onto ourselves. Many of us have done that for years. And I think the most empowering thing that we can do in this moment is to say, stop. Is this in alignment with who I am? And if it is not, you are empowered to not conform to that definition, whatever it is that you feel is being pushed on you. And it could be overt, it could be covert. It doesn't even matter. Diana's message is that you get to choose. That's the empowerment. And if you don't know what to choose yet, that is okay. You are empowered to sit in the uncertainty of what that means for you at this moment, because this is a journey. There is no one-shot pill. There is no one answer for every single woman. And that is where the empowerment begins, by recognizing that you are uniquely designed. You are unique. In this sea of humanity, there's one you, and you get to decide what that looks like and how that works out in your life and the journey that you're going to take. And when we do make a decision that may not be the best for us, acknowledging that, figuring out what you learn from it, empower yourself to flip that coin and see it differently, but in a way that's congruent. This is a deep, wide, powerful conversation, and I hope that this has led you on a path. Put your foot in a direction that's going to lead you to your own true empowerment. And if this has been empowering for you, and if this has been encouraging for you, I ask you, if any part of this meant something to you, that you would share it with another woman, because we definitely want this conversation to continue. So please do your part and share this with one friend. Maybe have a group of women and do some of this work together. Figure out and hold each other accountable to figuring out what it is empowerment means to each one of you individually. Thank you, friends, for joining us today. I look forward to sharing more inspirational people, conversations, and strategies in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.